All right, let's get right into it. Today we're unpacking a really complex and frankly challenging report. It details what it calls the Smedema Affair and alleges some pretty deep systemic failures within the Dutch state.
The report kicks off with this incredibly stark statement. It really sets the tone for everything we're about to cover. It's painting a picture of a citizen's fight against the very systems that are supposed to be there for their protection. It really makes you wonder, right? What happens when the people designed to protect you are the ones you need protection from?
So, this brings us to the heart of the matter. The case study the report calls the Smedema Affair, and it all starts way back in April 2004 with an attempt to report a very serious crime.
The source claims that a citizen, Hans Smedema, walked into a police station to file this report. That's a fundamental right for anyone under Dutch law. He was doing exactly what you're supposed to do when you have evidence of a crime.
Well, here's where things take a bizarre turn. According to the document, the detective handling the case was explicitly told not to create an official report, what's known as a procès verbal. And get this, the order allegedly came in a letter directly from the Ministry of Justice. Now you have to understand, without that single piece of paper, a criminal case in the Dutch system basically doesn't exist. It's like an administrative off switch for justice.
So, how on earth could they justify blocking an official police report? This is where the story gets really disturbing. The report argues that the state used a deeply cynical strategy. It weaponized psychiatry to completely discredit the citizen and his family.
You see, the husband Hans Smedema recognized the symptoms in his wife as something called structural dissociation. That's a condition where a person's personality splits into different parts to cope with severe, overwhelming trauma. It's a known response. But instead of exploring that, the source says the state appointed specialists in schizophrenia. This took the case down a completely different and, as the report claims, a totally destructive path.
This table just lays it all out so clearly. It's the whole conflict in a nutshell. Look at the two columns. If you follow the schizophrenia model on the left, you see the patient's story as a delusion, a break with reality. And what's the implication? They're an unreliable witness. But if you follow the trauma model on the right, those exact same symptoms are seen as evidence of a real historical truth. The report argues that the system deliberately chose the path on the left because it allowed them to dismiss the entire crime report as a fantasy.
And the source has a name for this: institutional gaslighting. It's this idea that by mislabeling a legitimate trauma response as a psychotic delusion, the entire system can invalidate the victim. It turns a cry for help into a symptom of a disease.
Now, this kind of gaslighting, as the report calls it, doesn't just happen on its own. It's propped up by something the source calls the bureaucratic wall. It even uses this really powerful biblical metaphor for the Ministry of Justice and Security, calling it a Moloch. This ancient, all-consuming, ungovernable beast.
So how did this bureaucratic monster even come to be? Well, the report points a finger at the 2010 merger of the Justice and Security Ministries. It argues that the checks and balances that were supposed to keep law enforcement and legal protection separate just dissolved. What you get is a closed system, more interested in protecting itself than in finding justice.
And this system created what the source describes as a perfect administrative trap, a catch-22. Just follow the steps. You report a crime, but the official report is blocked. No report means no case number. No case number means no prosecutor can even look at it. And the end result? No investigation, no justice. It's a procedural maze with no exit.
So what's the ultimate outcome of combining that psychiatric label with this bureaucratic wall? The report uses a truly chilling term for it: a state of civil death.
Now, this isn't some formal status in a law book. The report describes it as a functional reality. You still have your rights on paper, but you've lost the practical ability to use them. And how? The source points to a mechanism it calls a secret curatele, a sort of informal, clandestine guardianship that makes it almost impossible for you to hire a lawyer. Yeah, the big question is, how could that even happen in a country like the Netherlands? The report suggests it's all hidden away in the administrative plumbing of the state. It claims that a psychiatric diagnosis can trigger a kind of flag in the legal aid board system. This flag creates what the report calls a cordon sanitaire, basically a quarantine zone that warns lawyers to stay away from the case.
Okay, so you're faced with this seemingly impossible situation, but the document doesn't just leave it there. It actually proposes a highly specific and pretty ingenious solution to try and break this deadlock.
This is a fascinating legal workaround. The idea is to create a foundation, a sticting, and then legally transfer your claim to it. Think about it. A foundation is a legal entity. You can't diagnose a foundation with the delusional disorder, right? This move is designed to force the courts to stop looking at the person and finally start looking at the actual evidence of the case itself.
And beyond this one case, the source proposes a whole blueprint to dismantle this alleged machine. It calls for splitting up that giant Moloch ministry, giving real power to oversight bodies, and, this is critical, reforming psychiatry to make sure a diagnosis can never, ever be used as a veto on justice again.
And that really is the question the report leaves us with. It's a huge question about the delicate and maybe dangerous balance between medicine, the law, and the power of the state. When a doctor's diagnosis can effectively erase a crime, who really holds all the cards?